elections. But of major concern is how governors are spending funds, allegedly, to support the BBI report initiative.
Well, a very good morning, Brenda. I'm coming to you from Kisii town, where in a few minutes we'll be having ODM leader Raila Odinga getting into this particular city. So the kind of arrangement that we have with regards to these stakeholders meeting, where we'll have, first of all, the delegates having that special sitting at Kisii Sports Club, and after that we'll have now a bigger platform where we will have everyone else involved at the Gusii Stadium later on in the day. So back to your question, what's happening right now is that we have over 15 governors who are expected to grace this particular occasion. Remember, apart from the 6 governors from the 6 counties that make up the Nyanza region, we are also made to understand that we should be having others from different parts of the country. Apart from that, we also expect but we expect really high-profile government officials, cabinet secretaries. We are yet to get the details. So apart from the leadership of the Nyanza region, we also expect really other leaders, both elected and from the executive arm of the government, to grace this particular, the first of its kind. This is the first stakeholders conference of its kind to be held in Kisii. So we expect really several other players to come in to share their views with regards to what they think of the BBI report. Remember, this was a 9-point agenda which was supposed to look into a number of issues bedeviling the nation. So this is part of the long process that started with the March 9th handshake. So as it stands right now, we're having really serious security beefed up in this particular city because of the kind of population that is expected to assemble at the Gusii Stadium later in the day. So from
All right. Now, that is a man on the ground, Kevin Oguta, reporter based in Kisumu, but is currently in Kisii County, just to talk to us about matters. BBI report. That forum brings the governor of Kisumu County, Professor Anyang' Nyong'o, the governor of Kisii, Charles Ongwae, when it comes to trying to get the views of different leaders and also Kenyans at large when it comes to the BBI report. It is a report that has caused a lot of political reactions. A section of Jubilee leaders supporting, a section not supporting, a lot of back and forth. But we will hear from all these leaders. And as you've heard it from my colleague Kevin Oguta, it is that we expect different cabinet secretaries and top government officials to actually grace that occasion. And this morning, it is a discussion that I also want to have here in our studio with our guest, learned guest. Thank you so much for joining us here on KTN News Center this morning. And talking to us about this whole matters BBI report, it is none other than Dennis Moturi, who's a lawyer seated on my immediate extreme left, and Mr. Evans Wafula, who's also a political analyst. Gentlemen, thank you for joining us here this morning. We're talking about matters BBI report. And let me start with you, Mr. Wafula. A lot of preparation, a lot of funds are going to the BBI report, including the extension, and billions are being used. But yet Kenyans are saying, why spend all this money on this report, yet this money can be used for development agenda?
Actually, that's what has been the rhetoric. But we need to understand that we have reached the critical stage in this process, the process where we need to see actual citizen participation. And the best way to have this citizen participation is what we are now seeing in terms of county processes. As you said before, is that probably we expect to see every county having kind of a forum. Mm-hmm. But the issue here, we know that the whole process costs almost about 10 billion. Where is this 10 billion? Because people will ask, they need to account for this money. And I think that to have that the participation from the citizen is that let's wait and see actually what are we going to get out of the processes. Mm-hmm. And because the budget is there, the money that was put aside for the BBI, we know it clearly, it's almost amounted to about 10 billion. Mm-hmm. So I don't think there's any problem, because I think it's a process. But what we need to ask ourselves is that the legitimization and the legalization of this process is going to come as a result of what we're going to see coming out of these processes. I mean, people have been talking about BBI in churches. That has not been the legitimate process. But the legitimate process begins today. And we expect to see that even in central, in Western Kenya, we're now seeing in Nyanza, in Coast Province, there's going to be this kind of activities.
All right. And you know, it's good you're talking about, okay, funds have been set aside and this is something that, you know, it is expected. But then let me bring in, you know, the advocate here. I mean, the content of the BBI report, it's a 9-point agenda. And yesterday when I was talking to my colleague Ibrahim Karanja in Nyeri, the sentiments from residents in Nyeri came out very clearly. Some of them don't even know what BBI report entails.
I think there is a problem in the entire BBI process, the way it was started and the way it's being run to the end. In the sense that this report as is supposed to be people's report, because the committee that went out, that was gazetted to collect the views, went to the public. So that we believe that the report as presented already takes account the people's views. Now, there is no very clear framework on going forward what exactly you are doing. In fact, if you ask me, this is public participation at 2 levels. There was initially a public participation where the general public gave, you know, views, gave ideas, and the report, then they drafted the report. What should have been expected is the report to be availed to Kenyans.
But then which begs the question, when you're saying that, of course there's public participation,
yes,
and the people that we're seeing appearing before the BBI team, truth be told, they're not just what people call the common wananchi wa kawaida.
Yes.
We were seeing representatives from, you know, the trade unions, representatives from different private sector, representatives from different political sectors. But the common wananchi, you know, the Wanjiko on the ground, we never saw any representation, and hence that's why the reason as to why some of them are saying, mimi sijasoma hiyo report, hata sijui hiyo report inasema nini, but when my political leader has read, let me go with what they're saying, because it's now turning to be like a document for the select few.
I understand the concern that the general public might not have been fully involved. But really, what stopped the general public from being involved? What were the problems in terms of policy planning that really made the general public not to be fully involved? That's the question that we should ask ourselves. And what steps as the secretariat for the BBI or the leaders who are propelling this whole idea made it place to ensure that the general public are even able to participate more? We have today a convention, a meeting in Kisii, but I am not so certain that it's still able to capture the general public's interests. The most likely scenario is that we'll get the political leaders talking to the people and telling them this is what we have. Yet we could have anticipated that this report could have been availed even in electronic form, in fact in print form, so that people can be able to access it. Other than those who can access internet, because that's the only place I've seen it, I have not seen even that document being interpreted to Swahili, so that it's available for the general public to read. So what is their quality of participation even when we start doing this kind of
and it's good you're talking about political leaders being brought in. So, Mr. Fula, let me just bring you into this conversation once again. I mean, we're expecting different political leaders, and you've heard it from my colleague, you know, Kevin Ogutu, who's just spoken to us in Kisii, saying that we expect even CSS to be part of this. Yet the Constitution is very clear that the CSS are not supposed to be politicians.
I think the problem we are having, even from my colleague, the lawyer here, is that we are trying, there's going to be an elitist kind of argument around the BBI, and that is where we are going wrong, that this big process has been left for the so-called elite. But I think the most critical thing we need to understand is that it's cut across the social fabric of the Kenyan society. You've clearly put it that we have people representation from the religious communities, we have representation from trade unions and many other people who have been in this process. But I think most important what we need to do is that, and that's a problem in Kenya, even during the constitutional review process, there are many people who did not read the constitution and say, so-and-so has read, so we'll agree with that. But I think it's a responsibility of each one of us to be able to interpret this constitution to whoever is interested in it. And for example, I was in the village, and I was able to talk to my grandmother who did not understand what is happening. I think what I told her convinces her that actually we're in safe hands. So
and some don't even know that there's a BBI report.
And some don't even know. But I think we've got responsibility. The problem that is happening, the politicization of this process, and they're trying to make this process to be of the elite class, is what is going to ruin this process, especially what is happening today. I think my colleague does not understand that the formation of the people participating is not only the CS and politicians, but even interest groups, including the youth, are in this convention. So we should not focus very much on the big names of the big groups that are there, but we should actually ask ourselves which other groups are represented. But I believe that this process has just begun. And I think that the 9 points that the process intend to achieve, especially the 3 critical ones of national cohesion, for example, fighting corruption, these are things that we are seeing even happening before the implementation of the BBI. So I don't think there's a lot of push and pull, but I think it's only that we need to have the patience and a bit of decorum in terms of letting this process just take its course.
All right. So, but even, Mr. Muturi, even as, you know, the governors of the Nyanza region, you're talking about Professor Nyang' Nyong'o, you're talking about, you know, Governor Ongwae of Kisii County, come together to lead, you know, because they're the champions in these two regions, the senior political leaders in these 2 regions, in terms of their ranks of leadership, in terms of the gubernatorial seat, leading people to try understand, to come to understand the report, support it. But then it begs the question, is there a need now? Was there a need actually by the President and the Right Honorable Raila Odinga to extend the term of the BBI team? Because governors are also being used to champion the BBI agenda.
I think I will reiterate that there is a problem in the entire process. In the sense that, remember, this report was launched in Bomas, and every political leader who stood, and many Kenyans will tell you this is a good report. So the question then begs, what is these people are struggling to really sense these people? Because if you look at this, you know, the principles of governance themselves, is that when you have elected leaders and they act on your behalf, unless you have a challenge in terms of what they have proposed and therefore you want to challenge it. So that if all the elected leaders participated from all the political divides and the stakeholders agree this is a good report, then why are we really struggling to fight it and say we want to implement it in this manner and the other manner? Yet the Constitution, you look at Article 255, 256 and 257, is very clear on constitutional amendments, if any. So that tells you that this is a question of politics. We want the political class, if you ask me, they want something active to discuss. Something that is setting the stage for future politics as we go to 2022. Because really, this is a document, even at the very basic level, all the leaders seem to agree, this is a good document, let it be implemented. So what's the problem?
I think just to correct you is that these are consultative forums that are going into the counties. Whether we will go to a referendum or whether it will go to a referendum or it will go to parliament, that's another thing we'll get there. But I think it's very premature now to criticize the process, which to me, I think it's consultative at the county level.
But as much as it's consultative, Mr. Afula, we have seen people criticizing it. Look at the political talks of what's happening. There are people saying that even the political division within the Nyanza region about this consultative meeting.
And I think, and I agree with you, this is a political process. It has political interest. We have seen people who started criticizing this process even before it began. They criticized it before it began. They criticized when it was being launched. And yet they became part of it during that particular day of launching. And we saw it clearly on TV. The people who sat in that particular launching ceremony did not even believe in what is happening. Yet immediately they came out, they started fighting the same process.
Then if it's a consultative meeting, Mr. Afula, as I get also the sentiments of Mr. Mugure, why are people so jittery? Yet it's just a consultative meeting. And we're seeing senior government officials expected to attend the consultative meeting.
And that's why I'm saying this process, as I said, this process will be legitimized and legalized by the participation of people and through these processes. If they do not take these processes to the people the way they are doing, then it will lack that legitimacy and legality. So that when people criticize, they will criticize that they did not understand. And I think those people who criticized it should wait for it in their various counties, and they should participate in it. I think I'm not acting as a crusader of the BBI, but I think let's put the facts as they are. It's a political process.
All right.
The problem is that there's a divided interest in this whole process. You've seen the deputy president, for example, we say as it is, he has a particular stand on the BBI, and there are people behind him, whether it is in the counties, whether it's the political class, who have their own opinion about this process. And I think, as we all agree, from a legal point of view and from a political point of view, I think this process will only be possible if it's let to go as it's going.
So what do we expect from this consultative meeting? Do you expect a lot of politics to play? Because I'm seeing some of the politicians from Nyanza region, you know, and when I talk about Nyanza, it's Kisumu, Kisii, you know, actually trying to pinpoint.
One of the things that I believe, and I think we might have to agree, all of us, is that Kenya is a country governed by law. And when we follow the legal framework that we have given unto ourselves in a process, then we will not have these squabbles. People can have different opinions. I do not hold, brief for anyone who either supports or disagrees with the report. And that is really not even the issue on the table, because in terms of content, I have not had anybody really say there's a problem with the report. And if therefore, if that's the case, then maybe I want to imagine that the consultative process is to simply let people know what is in the report, which the first stage could have been, if at all anybody was interested on the general public, knowing the content of the report and having an opinion on it, then it should have been availed to them so that there's quality discussion. That already has not been done. There's nobody that has, we have not seen print copies of the same. I have not seen the team even interpret it so that people can read the document, they can access in terms of language easily. Because the copy that I've seen is done in English language. And we know there are very many people in the rural area.
And it's more than 100 pages.
Yes. And there are very many. Let me just make my point.
All
Let me
right.
finish what I'm saying.
All right.
So what I'm trying to say here is that I see more politics taking center stage when the framework is not clear. As a lawyer, and many lawyers and many other people had an issue in the manner in which the committee was constituted. It was simply gazetted. It was a good idea. We've not had a problem with it. But we thought that we have had such kind of forums, and it was nothing difficult for the two proponents who were in leadership to push the agenda through a legal framework in Parliament, so that then the whole process is looked at in detail, and therefore nobody is left out, and every idea is put in place, and including a structured mechanism on implementation. Right now we have a problem because we have a report. A few people argue we need to have a referendum. When you look at the content of the report as is, we feel there will be no need for a referendum.
There's no need for a referendum. Just hold on to that thought. And I know, Mr. Fuller, you wanted to say something. Hold on also to your thought. We need to take a short commercial break, gentlemen. But I'm not letting you go because this is a discussion that we'll continue having after a short commercial break. And when we come back, we'll continue this discussion, including what is making the headlines in Nyeri County, including Peter Mugure.